to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and Ray Fisher, a.k.a. Cyborg, is back in the news. As you may remember, he tweeted out this statement about Joss Whedon. Well, now he's finally spoken up again about why he hasn't said anything further. And to really get into this, I wanted to have a conversation with someone who actually could give me proper legal advice. I'm so happy to have her here. Lindsay, are you there?
I'm here. What's up?
Lindsay Glazer, welcome back to the show. Lindsay is an attorney, so she's got insight on some of this and can help me sort of sort out some questions I have about what is Ray really doing here? What is he allowed to do? So, Lindsay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lindsay, I know, just for the audience to be aware, Lindsay's not like an uber nerd like everybody else. She knows a little bit about this, but I coached her a little bit on what things, who these people are, and she's read the statements, and she has a little bit of a prep on this, but she doesn't know the whole Snyder Cut drama. For those of you watching, I'm sure you do. There is some backstory to all this where Ray is clearly upset with Joss, with the way Cyborg was treated. So you can't ignore all that baggage coming into this story because I do think it's relevant. But let's stay to what we know so far. So just to recap, everybody, Ray made this tweet. Joss Whedon's on-set treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. He was enabled in many ways by Jeff Johns and John Berg. Accountability is greater than entertainment. Now, Lindsay, I want to come straight to you because this statement is pretty vague, and it does feel pretty intense to sort of throw out there this shot at Joss Whedon. Is there anything slanderous or libel here that Ray should have been weary of or more careful about?
Honestly, not really. Joss Whedon is a public figure. Ray Fisher, who I don't know who he is, sounds like he's also a public figure. It's not illegal to have opinion. It's not illegal to be a jerk. And when you talk about libelous or slanderous statements of public figures, the standard is much higher. It's not like, Andy, you going out and saying that about me. In order to prove a libelous statement, Joss Whedon have to say that Ray Fisher knowingly made a claim in reckless disregard of what he actually knew was false. And it's honestly, reading Ray's statement, it sounds like his lawyer said, all right, that's safe enough to say. Don't say anything else until we do it. And he made another tweet later, right, that he was going to prove what he was saying.
Well, so yeah, this first tweet, again, he's made a new statement, which we're about to get to, but just to verify and confirm, you said nothing slanderous here. There's nothing that Joss can do to sort of say, hey, Ray, that's not right. Because they're public figures, there's no NDA or anything that could have sort of stopped Ray or get Ray in trouble for saying this specific tweet, correct?
Not really, unless there was something in the NDA that said you will not tweet about misconduct that you don't agree with, but we don't know what it is. If the misconduct was a crime, no NDA can get out of that. Like if Andy, you and I are married and we decide to get divorced and we come to an agreement where I have you sign that I don't owe you any child support and we have a child, we can go into court with that contract, but the court's going to throw it out and be like, you can't agree to that. That's illegal. So it's hard to know without seeing the NDA, right? Because if Joss Whedon said, hey, man, if Joss Whedon did something illegal, you can't NDA out of that.
Correct. All right, and that's what we're going to get to next. But you did say, we were talking briefly, he probably could have avoided speaking on behalf of the cast and the crew, correct? That sort of broad generalization of speaking for others was another thing that could have been a little dangerous on his part.
I'm saying in what he could have done if he wanted to be totally safe. It says, this is my experience and my experience only. It's not meant to reflect anyone else's experience, but Joss Whedon, my opinion, Joss Whedon's on-set treatment of cast and crew is the rest of the tweet. That's the safest way to do anything. You can see that when people do Yelp reviews. But honestly, Joss Whedon's not a protected figure.
All right, so then following up what he did next, because a lot of people have sort of been upset that he hasn't said anything else, myself included. I'm just like, you're throwing this out there. If you got a beef with him, we want to know what happened so we can sort of know, is Joss actually a terrible person? What did he do? Or are you just mad because your part was cut out and he was just sort of a jerk on set? I tend to sort of ignore reports of, oh, they were such a jerk on set. I mean, it's like Christian Bale had that famous tirade where he was screaming at the DP, but it's like it happens. Those are very intense situations. People are working 9 hours. There's pressure. It doesn't make it right, but it doesn't mean someone should be canceled because they're a jerk on a set. So I'm taking all this with a grain of salt because I need to know what happened. So there's a statement he made, but I'm going to play it because Ray actually did it through an Instagram live, so we can listen to it together. Lindsay, hear his take.
Oh my gosh. Someone says, is my NDA over? No, it is not. I am still very much under contract, and I'm still very much under a non-disclosure agreement. So I've got to be very careful about what I say and how I say it. Otherwise, I can get sued into oblivion. So just a disclaimer there. So for the folks who are looking for more specifics in the moment right now, I'm sorry that I cannot give them to you in the moment right now. You just got to make sure all your ducks are laid out in a row so you can go ahead and handle the situation appropriately, so you don't end up being outside of professionally liable, legally liable for anything that could be litigious or whatever that would be. So this will take some time. We will get it done. We will win. And then we'll be able to move on in the world. That's it.
I don't know what he's trying to win, but yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that as you hear it?
I mean, he seems pretty confident that he's going to win. To be that confident, like, I mean, I can't imagine. No case is guaranteed about anything, like, ever. And more likely than not, when there's any case like that involves a contract or an EDA, no one wins. You just settle somewhere in between. But to be able to take on that franchise of Joss Whedon, I can't imagine. I need to understand how well known is Ray Fisher?
Not very. I mean, Cyborg was his first big part. He didn't really do much before that.
I can't imagine what happened to make him would make someone take on that big machine. But Kevin Smith coming out and saying something.
Yeah, Kevin Smith sort of confirmed that when he was working on Skywalker sets and people worked on Justice League, the special effects guy said there was a fair amount of trashing Zack's version. Talking about Zack Snyder, the director of Justice League originally. They were trashing Zack's version of the movie on set by Joss. Whedon would cut down, dismiss, and be negative about Zack's version, which he had seen and all these people had made together without him. So yeah, I mean, Kevin Smith, he doesn't. I know I met new Kevin. He doesn't tend to sort of lie and put himself out there unless he knows it's a reliable thing. So yeah, I mean, this is telling, and I've heard this from other sources too, that they were not fond of Zack Snyder. But you also got to remember, and Lindsay, you don't know all the nerd part, but there were a lot of people talking smack about Zack Snyder back then because they weren't fans of those movies, and so it was sort of the in thing to do at the time, which is why this new movement has come forward and why so many people are upset, because no one really did give Zack Snyder a lot of credit. But none of this confirms the sort of abusive behavior is what.
Well, right. Even if everything Kevin Smith said is true, so what? There's nothing preventing unless the NDA says something about Joss Whedon can't talk shit about. I mean, I can't imagine that says that. You can't limit people's free speech to their. I mean, I assumed everyone there signed an NDA.
Well, that's my biggest question to you, and because there's a lot of fans, and now Ray's sort of doing it, and he's sort of using. It seems like he's like, oh yeah, I'll jump on this NDA excuse. Look, I guess to be fair, both sides. I don't know what the NDA says, and you've told me an NDA can say anything, but the reality is an NDA can't force. A studio can't make an NDA and force an actor to ignore abusive behavior or illegal behavior or racist or sexist behavior as if like they. Oh yeah, well if hey. You signed up for this movie, but he touched you on the audition. So what? You signed an NDA. Like that doesn't make any sense.
That's not legal. Yeah, they can't enforce that. They can't enforce parts of the contract that are wrong. But I mean, there's nothing I can think of that would prevent Joss from saying shit about another director's movie. Isn't that his job?
Yeah, I mean, and then we're all nerds, we're all critics, they're all public figures too. So this criticism feels like it's valid, and that's where I'm frustrated because it does seem a little petty. Like, granted, I want to hear what Ray has to say, but his sort of like putting out the vague statement, and I'm curious, Lindsay, like, what's the difference of putting out the vague statement or making an accusation of something that he did that was gross or abusive? Shouldn't they both be technically allowed?
I assume they're both technically allowed, but Ray's just trying to be vague. He says he's going to win, but you're saying Ray's not that famous, so who knows if he's just trying to use this thing with Joss to up his own whatever, his own what do you call it, his profile, his star level on IMDb or whatever. Well,
he claims it's all about doing the right thing. He's not doing this for attention. He speaks about it in there. Accountability is more important than entertainment. Is sort of that there are some things more important than self-preservation. I think he's friends with Zack. I think he is genuinely moved and frustrated by how they treated Zack. And look, I love that. I love loyalty. I think that's great. But tearing down someone else who took over a job, who may have been a jerk during the process, 3 years later when you won. They now won. They have their movie coming out. Why would Ray do this? It doesn't make sense.
That's kind of crazy because Ray has a movie coming out with Joss, right? Did I misunderstand that part?
No, Zack Snyder is now finishing Justice League with Cyborg already, but they're not shooting more. It's already done. But yeah, Ray Fisher will have allegedly a bigger part as Cyborg in this movie. And I can understand why he's riding that train, because if HBO Max, likes this and Zack Snyder's thing does well, they could very well say, let's do a Cyborg movie for HBO Max. There's definitely a lane here he can run in and succeed with HBO Max and AT&T. But
my cynic lawyer self thinks that maybe Ray Fisher's lawyers or PR people are telling him to do that to stir up publicity.
Right, very well. And the fact that he's doing even this live stream to me just reeks of why is he doing this? To his 285 fans live on Instagram answering questions. Look, anybody who does that wants attention.
Right.
You don't sit there sipping tea talking to fans unless you are craving it, right? There is something there you can't ignore.
No, listen, if he's doing it, he's trying to get views. He's using it to get whatever. It may or may not be true. We don't know what he's talking about. But if it was something to do with racism or something else, he easily could say anything about it without violating the NDA, especially right now in this community. But because that stuff's illegal. But the fact that Kevin Smith came out and backed him up makes me wonder if something more is there. Although all Kevin Smith is saying is, hey, yeah, Joss Whedon talked shit about Snyder. Well, so what? You're telling me that Snyder's fans and DC have been talking shit, their fan bases are talking shit to each other the whole time. There's nothing illegal about talking shit.
Right. But it can upset fans, but there's nothing legal. This is one other take as in surging his feet. I want to make sure I have the full story of where we know so far. What if Ray Fisher tried diplomacy in private, but it didn't work or fell on deaf ears? Why shouldn't he make it public? The last resort is inevitable if no one is paying attention. Have you considered this possibility before you went on to crucify Ray? This was someone who was criticizing sort of Ray for not just coming forward and saying it, or why are you doing it pettily on Twitter and not doing it privately? And he retweeted this. So Ray Fisher retweeted this, clearly sort of trying to imply, I've been trying to do it in private. Look, I don't know what that means, and I can relate to that. I think it's always better to try and handle these in private. But, there's always going to be disagreements, and Joss and Ray may not ever see eye to eye on this. But is it worth calling him out, putting him on blast like he did with this tweet, and calling out Joss Whedon's ex-wife, which to me it's like, I'm not even saying what she's saying is true accurate, but anytime you're bringing in kids and ex-wives, it starts getting too personal for me, where there's so much emotion that I have to step back and be like, all right, this is getting too intense for me. I need to see, clear hard facts of stuff to prove that this guy's an abuser or, something worse, rather than just we didn't get along in a movie and the creative differences, which happens all the time in Hollywood. Go ahead. Sorry, Lindsay, what were you going to say?
I don't remember. I think that I was going to say that what it just sounds like is Joss Whedon's a shitty boss because he's trashing the movie that all of his cast made, so they probably felt bitter about it. I can't imagine that brings people together, but you just don't know. Maybe he's having a bad few weeks. You have no idea. People are working 30-hour, just crazy amount of hours. You have no idea what's going on in people's personal life. I don't. Charisma Carpenter's an actress. He said, I know Kai Cole is Joss Whedon's ex-wife, but who's Charisma Carpenter? I know she's an actress.
She was in Buffy, and then she was in Angel, and she alleges, and I believe her actually in looking into the story, but that when she got pregnant in her sort of season 4, it sort of went against what Joss's creative vision was, and they sort of wrote her off in this terrible way, and the fans did not like it. And so she's talked about really being hurt by sort of the way she was treated during her pregnancy. And that's what his ex-wife goes off and says, well, he's such a feminist icon, but he was doing all these other things behind back that fans should know. Look, that is a lot of sort of private sort of things that Joss did, and it's a lot of creative choices that fans may not agree. But my struggle is was it abusive? Is it something,
I don't know. Joss's main goal is like everyone else's main goal, profit.
Correct. But I think that show actually didn't do well once he made that decision, and the fans were sort of annoyed when Cordelia's character changed. It wasn't the best spin. But she has said that she is forgiven and would work with him again. That's the last thing I heard about that. So that's what's frustrating to me of it all. Of if the only criticism is from his ex-wife, which I'm not even trying to discredit his ex-wife, I just know custody, divorce hearings, it brings out the worst in people. It's always not the most honest, best place to judge someone, either side, right? And so I need something beyond just that. And for Ray to come out with these broad statements and now blame the NDA, where it's like, Ray, you already said you're already saying it. You're putting it out there. Again, final thoughts from you, Lindsay. But again, just to echo it, we don't know the contract. I get it. That's fair. But isn't it this statement already sort of putting it out there? If he's got something gross or abusive to say, couldn't he just say it?
He could if it was a crime. I mean, what it says to me is Ray Fisher called Joss Whedon unprofessional, but it's actually unprofessional what he's doing too. So
one could argue that.
I mean, if I'm looking at this and I'm another director, I go, all right, well, that guy's trouble. Or I really do think that HBO Max or other PR are like, yeah, use this, ride this train or whatever. The fact that Kevin Smith actually came out, even though Kevin Smith didn't say anything, but yeah, hey, Joss Whedon talked shit about Zack Snyder. Kevin Smith makes me want to know way more, because Kevin Smith in general doesn't cause a lot of waves or say a lot of things. So if he says something, I mean, I believe Kevin Smith, but also who cares? Like he said Zack Snyder's version was shit, and so did apparently a bunch of other fandom people.
Yeah, she's summing it up pretty well, guys. She doesn't really know, but that is absolutely true. And it's crazy because I believe Kevin Smith. I'm sure a lot of people dismissed it, including Joss. Is that respectful? No. Does it suck for the fans who like Zack and want to see Snyder? No. So you can have that feeling, but to warrant this tweet, I need more to hear gross, abusive, unprofessional, unacceptable, enabled. These are key words right now in very important movements that to me feels like someone's being petty or has a something out. And if they're not going to actually name names and come out with sort of what the issue is and sort of cry to the sky, I have a problem with that. It's like, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready. But now to claim, oh, well, the NDA says I can't say anything, I'm having trouble buying it. So I appreciate you offering this insight. It sounds like we don't actually know, to be fair, because we haven't read the contract. It could say anything, but you have said to confirm it, they can't get away with anything criminal or abusive. There's nothing that allows them to do that.
You can't just agree. You can't just have anything in your NDA. I mean, you can have anything in your NDA, but you can't expect to enforce it. But honestly, I mean, I'm looking at my Twitter. I mean, I see some retweets, but I don't see anyone I think Joss Whedon's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and interesting. He said nothing. Do you think that's a smart move on Joss's part to just sort of ignore it and not say a thing?
Yeah. If you want to give no credit to someone, you just go, who cares? They're unimportant. Don't care.
And it will fuel Ray even further. And it's like, all right, if you're going to come at me, you better come at. You actually have to take a shot if you're going to come at me, not just be vague.
I'd be interested to know if Joss sent her cease and desist or has a lawyer working on her, or if he's just who gives a fuck, you know?
Well, it's interesting too because clearly he's talking to lawyers. He's admitting now, and I part of me wonders if the lawyers have now gotten harder on Ray because they're like, dude, slow it down. What are you doing? What are you doing? Speaking out of turn on Twitter like this, you could actually get in trouble for this stuff. So stop talking.
That's what I hear. I mean, the more you talk, the more it's evidence. All that stuff is screenshotted. I mean, Joss could be doing the smart thing, which is waiting for Ray to fuck up.
Right. Tell me what I'm accused of, Ray, before I say anything. Yeah, all great thoughts. Thank you for offering it, guys. If you aren't following Lindsay Glazer, please go do it. You can go to lindsayglazer.com, or you can follow her over on Twitter at Lindsay Glazer, Glazer. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for being here. Guys, follow her on all the social medias. Anything else you want to plug?
That's it. Thank you so much. You can find me at Instagram at Lindsay Glazer Comedy. My name is Lindsay, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Lindsay. Always good to have your insight here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. It's Tuesday, so we'll be live 9 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always live here on the channel. Stay tuned and subscribe for more content. Bye, everybody.